All right, so welcome to the next edition of The Original Digital, which is airing on Media Village. I'm Corey Trefletti, and I'm very excited to have a completely different type of conversation today than I usually do. I'm welcoming Colleen Schell. Colleen and I used to work together at Kara, and I'm going to let Colleen give you a little bit of background about what she's been up to since we worked together there. So Colleen, say hi.
Hi, Corey. So great to be here. And yeah, I'll give you a little bit of background what I've been up to. But essentially, what I did is I moved to Bali to see what life was like outside of Western values. And while I was there during the pandemic, I had the opportunity to do some underground storytelling events that has turned into my passion, my dharma. And I've created a company called FABx, the Fabulous and Extraordinary Stories of Life. And it is about unlocking people's voices, amplifying their stories and their wisdom so that they can heal and others can heal, and also create this profound human connection that is so lost right now and so needed, especially in this time of loneliness and disconnection of technology. And it is just taken fire. So
Hmm.
I've produced stages across the globe. I've had hundreds of people on my stages, thousands of people in the audience, and just really wanting to talk to you and your audience about, well, what does it look like to amplify your voice, your story, and share your wisdom so that there's more love, joy, connection, success, expansion, all that good stuff available for you and the people around you.
And when you and I reconnected, it's such a cool story in itself. And it definitely fits your personality because you've always been very effervescent. You get people excited, you get them motivated, you inspire them. But here's the first question I'm going to ask, okay? How did you connect storytelling to personal well-being? How does those two things really connect?
Okay, well, this was actually a surprise to me. So when I started the storytelling sanctuary underground in Bali, I just thought, okay, it's the pandemic. It'd be nice to get people together. We'll tell some stories. But what I didn't know is there was a profound healing experience for the speaker and the audience when it happened. The speaker would say, wow, that was really healing. I'm like, oh, great. And then the audience would come up to me and say, I healed from hearing their stories. I was like, really? At first, I thought they were just being nice, but then it happened again and again. And then I realized, oh my gosh, the sharing of authentic, real, vulnerable stories actually heals people
Hmm.
because they feel seen and they feel gotten.
Hmm.
So you know how when you're around other Pearl Jam enthusiasts
Yep.
and how you can kind of just look at each other and you get each other, you
Yep.
understand why, like this passion for Eddie. And there's some electricity and energetics that happens there when you
Hmm.
feel gotten. And this is what happens when stories are told from the stage and the audience members can resonate with that story.
Yeah, when you
They
say
feel like
you
seen.
feel when you say you feel gotten, but there's definitely a thing in human nature where you're seen and there's a wavelength between you and the other person that starts to align. And it sounds very, kind of goofy and very like California New Agey or Bali New Agey. But you do when you start to sync up with somebody in that way, it does feel good. It makes you feel good, it makes them feel good.
For sure. For sure. And the power in that is how you feel is everything. And this is why storytelling is so important in everyday life, but also in business. Is that when you're around someone and you're, you know, sharing your marketing message, if you make them feel amazing when they're around you, they attribute those feelings to you.
Hmm.
Because people don't do business with brands and companies, they do business with people. And so now all of a sudden you're amplifying that feeling and people feel like they get in sync. And actually, they've done studies that when stories are being told, the whole audience, including the storyteller, starts biologically syncing together,
Hmm.
start breathing together. Their hearts start beating in the same way. Their
Yeah.
their mind waves start synchronizing.
Yeah. So you're you started this in Bali, which by itself is an environment that's more conducive to people wanting to be in touch with how they feel and their well-being. And you said they're healing. But you've expanded that business in a way that you're doing these events in different cities around the world, and you're having audiences that are they're, for lack of a better term, they're vibing around that concept. So how has that expansion gone, and how has that expansion then applied to a business environment specifically?
So my how I've evolved my business is I'm really here to birth the next visionaries and industry luminaries. So I see that there is a need for a more powerful type of leadership out there.
Hmm.
And how are we training up our leaders and our visionaries and our luminaries to actually step forward and share their voice and their wisdom? And this includes business leaders, coaches, artists, creatives, change makers, influencers. How am I activating them in such a way so that they're able to get on the stage and powerfully and profoundly share their story so it moves, touches, and inspires an audience?
Mm-hmm.
You know, the feeling is undeniable. Like, it's just incredible when you're able to do that. And on the back end, you have more success, more income, more influence. You're someone to watch in the industry. You're being invited to the bigger opportunities. All of a sudden, doors are opening for you. So there's two sides of it that's so fantastic. It's this personal feeling. I'm really, making a difference and making an impact. And on the other side, it's like this business impact where I'm having much more success and getting to those bigger opportunities.
Mm-hmm. You have to probably be a little bit choosy though, right? Because there's a lot of people that will go out to try and tell a story, but it's not necessarily authentic. It's not genuine. They're doing it because they have an ulterior motive. How do you sort through to find either the people who are being authentic or the authentic stories that actually would align to an audience?
So I have a framework called the FABx storytelling formula.
Oh, okay.
And the formula dictates the story. So everyone who comes to the FABx storytelling training and stage experience has to use the formula.
Okay.
So they're signing up to, really what they're signing up to is their willingness to be very vulnerable on the stage and share the wisdom they earned and learned the hard way.
Mm-hmm.
So the FABx storytelling experience is not your, like, I made $1 million, I married my beloved, I climbed Mount Everest. It's the story that took you to your knees, when
Uh-huh.
things went sideways, when everything fell apart, and then what you learned along the way from standing up from that, from
Mm-hmm.
resiliency. What wisdom did you gain from that? And so the story is all, leading to at the end where you deliver that wisdom to the audience.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can use the storytelling formula again and again and again, but I use it specifically. You're mastering it through having this training and stage experience of sharing your vulnerable story that is dripping with your own personal wisdom
Mm-hmm.
that you have gained the right to share that wisdom
Mm-hmm.
because you've experienced it in your own life.
But how do you get people over? There's two things that come to mind. One is that when people have a resiliency story in them, a lot of those people are maybe too humble to want to go tell it because they may almost downplay it. They may feel like maybe my challenge, my tribulations weren't as important as they would be to somebody else, right? How do you get people over that? And how do you have to be almost vulnerable enough to be wanting to share your vulnerability. So there's a stepping stone before they even come to you. Do you find that people are pretty open to the concept? Do you feel like you have to push them and nudge them in that direction?
Most people that come to me have a desire to be on the stage and share their story, even if they don't
Okay.
know the story that they want to share. The biggest hurdle is the fear of public speaking.
Okay.
Now, on the other side, what you're pointing to though, is a lot of times I share this with my world change makers who have that humility in them and are like, oh, who am I to share my story? And the challenge is, if you don't share your transformation, you're being stingy.
Hmm.
And once I share that with them and have them understand, like, you've gained a transformation, you've gained wisdom that you can now support other people in having and putting them in their pocket when they're dealing with their dark night of the soul, when they're down on their knees. It's not
Mhm.
necessarily going to change everything for them, but it's a light they get to put in their pocket that they could get to, when they're dealing with something, they get to pull it out and be like, okay, I remember this.
Yeah.
She went through this. He did this. Okay, I can do this too. And
Yeah.
so if you're not willing to share that transformation in order to set other people free, you're you're being stingy. It's kind of selfish.
It's interesting to think about it that way because definitely I can see that. I can see it being considered selfish. there's also a lack of, a lot of people just don't want to be, they're not ready to be that vulnerable yet because it opens up a part of their soul that they're just not quite ready for others to see, even though it may be super beneficial. The other thing that worries me to some extent is some people, they put themselves out there finally, and then transforming it, sorry, sharing their transformation changes them, and
Hmm.
hopefully in a good way. But do you ever see a situation where someone sharing their transformation story, they become someone that they weren't supposed to be?
I haven't experienced it yet, but I make sure that my students know that there are some stories to be told to yourself and to your community for your own healing, to people you
Mhm.
trust. And those are those stories that you are ready to put on the stage. And
Yeah,
you need to know the distinction that you're not there to put it on the stage for therapy for yourself. And you're also not there to put it on stage for showboating, like, look how bad things are, like, oh, this will really get the audience.
yeah, okay,
It's, if that makes sense. So it really is what is ready to be shared on the stage, and go for that story. I mean, we all have so many stories of vulnerability and things where we went down to our knees. If you lived any kind of a life, I mean, everyone has a story to share.
yeah,
So, but which ones are ready for the stage and which ones are not? But I do, during the program, I do encourage people to share those stories that are not ready for the stage with people in their life for that healing benefit. Because the only thing I've seen out of sharing your vulnerable stories with your community and with the public is that healing effect. And what happens when you heal, you become the feeling of more whole, more expansive, more powerful. You take bigger risks, you have bigger ideas, you're willing to share more. It's like you just become a more exalted version of yourself.
yeah, yeah. So how has this transformed you?
Oh my god. I mean, it makes me cry. I mean, I have been honored to hear over 300 vulnerable personal stories of transformation, resiliency, triumph, tragedy, love, betrayal, like all of it. It's
Mhm.
just, and so now who I get to be is someone who's more understanding.
That's fantastic.
Oh my God, who has so much love in her heart and connection with humanity.
Hmm.
I mean, I just know I love everybody, even if I don't know it yet. Like I love everybody because once you hear their story, not only does it make them make you fall in love with them, but some of them can really take you to your knees.
Yeah, yeah. I can see having that effect. I can definitely see being able to have that alignment to people and understanding a little bit more about them than they were willing to share to anybody else. I mean, I know that one of the things that I've been proud of over the last probably 10 years or so is I'm not afraid to be vulnerable in some situations. Sometimes I don't mind making fun of myself or sharing something that I don't think I would have shared before that. And it
Mm,
definitely makes me feel better. Even the flip side of that, just knowing that if you can connect with somebody by being a little bit more vulnerable and being human around them, it just makes it easier to work with them. It makes it easier for you to find a common ground. And even when you don't agree with them, it's actually okay. Whereas it used to be that would create contention. It doesn't have to create contention.
great. That's beautiful, Corey. Yeah, that's a really good gift that you give people when you're vulnerable and it allows them to be vulnerable. All of a sudden, there's a foundation of realness happening.
Mhm.
That masks are breaking away. And then when there is, yeah, disagreement, it's just like, oh, okay, yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
We'll figure out a road there.
Yeah. You know that I write my weekly column. I've been writing it forever, since 2000. And I'll never forget because I've written thousands of columns at this point, but I
Mm,
never forget the one I wrote the week after September 11th. Because I remember writing this and it stuck with me, and it's more in line with what you're talking about. But just, I remember writing this article saying that any given day could be somebody's last day. So every chance you have to meet somebody or talk to somebody walking down the street, whatever, you should at least leave that interaction the same, if not better than you started out with, because that could be the last interaction they ever have or that you ever have. And you never want to go out on a bad note.
no, no, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. It's one of the things my mom taught me: leave people better than how you found them.
Yeah. And we're not always perfect at that. We're human beings. There are days where
No.
we do not live up to those exalted expectations. But if we
Yeah.
try,
Yeah.
So, so then let me ask you one more quick question. This business is doing well, it's growing, you're having impact on others. What is it that you would want to see happen over the next few years? Like what, 5 years from now, what do you want the impact of your business to be?
Well, I have visions of, FABx Austin, FABx San Francisco, FABx Paris, FABx Berlin, like really going for it around storytelling and community connection using storytelling, and then to amplify those visionaries and those luminaries and creating success for them so that I really have that speakers have a chance to be a huge participant of transforming humanity and awakening
Mhm.
humanity. And so
Mhm.
to be a part of that and to be a guide and someone who, bursts that is so exciting. And then what really excites me is this other idea of, my give back part of FabX, which I want to do FabX Legacy, where I take terminally ill people who need to tell their story before they go. I also want to
Mm.
do FabX Youth, where, kids get to get on stage. And I have to tell you, I used to do a lot of work in children's hospitals where I do play therapy with them. And they taught me so much. And I would love to do FabX terminally ill kids.
That'd be amazing.
It would be just hear their stories and to learn from them. They're just, they taught me so much. I got to go in and play with them and support them, and they got to really support me as well to learn to love and accept and to
Mhm.
still thrive in the face of death.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's
I
what I
mean,
would love.
my hope is that somebody watching this reaches out to you afterwards and they are able to say, hey, Colleen, I got a story, or I have someone who's got a story, or I want to help you tell your stories. Because all of those things that you just mentioned, those are things that the world kind of needs right now. We need people to be more vulnerable. There's definitely this atmosphere of the world where everybody puts on a big face and they act like they're bold and that they're in charge of everything. And in reality, they're probably not. And I think more people would be in a
Yeah.
better place and happier if we could just figure out what's true about your life and what are you willing to share and be vulnerable and align to people and get on that wavelength you're mentioning. So hopefully somebody, at least one person, responds to you after this.
Yeah, that'd be amazing. That would be amazing. I would love, and I'm also looking for a CEO.
Oh, there
You
you
know,
go.
I'm really good at training and putting together the events, and the business side it really needs someone support who just loves doing that.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
how can people get in hold of you after they watch this video?
Yeah, well, the best thing to do is go to fabx.tv. That's the website, but you also email me at colleen@fabx.tv and reach out if you want to get on the stage, if you have some ideas for me, if you have connections, if you want to be my CEO.
I got a couple people for you. I'm going to introduce you to a couple people after this.
I would love that. I would be amazing, Corey.
All right, Colleen. Well, thanks for taking the time. I really
Yeah.
appreciate it. And I appreciate the chance to chat.
Yeah, I really appreciate you too, Corey, and thank you so much for being a person who's out there sharing yourself and your story. It's profound.
I'll keep trying.
So good job.